Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, we are talking about how Citadel can't buy back any of the shares, the fake shares, AMC's real price, and many more in this video. First, we're taking a look at this. Don't forget, AMC holders, Citadel hasn't bought any of the fake shares they created. They said they could locate shares when they took our money and put placeholder shares into our brokerage account. That's been happening every day for the last 3 years. Hold until they fold. Now, we obviously know that Citadel is one of the largest short seller of AMC. Now, this simple picture depicts what is happening. And you can see Citadel, $120 billion owned, 65 billion assets sold, not yet purchased, and $65 billion pledged total assets, and it's obviously riding on Bank of America. Now, for those of you who don't obviously understand this, we firstly know that Citadel, at least in terms of what they reported, has $65 billion worth of short positions. And they've also took out another $65 billion in terms of loans. And that's why it comes together to $120 billion, or in fact, it should be $130 billion. Now, what's even more is the fact that they get most of the money from Bank of America, which obviously we've talked about in the past, that Bank of America, if they see these situations to become too risky, if they're ever in face of liquidity problems, of margin problems, they have the right to actually liquidate these positions. And so it's one of the things we've been talking about in terms of understanding Warren Buffett selling his Bank of America shares, in terms of understanding the financial positions of how all of these banks are over leveraged in their $1 trillion derivative positions, and the financials of Bank of America is obviously not appearing to look healthy. We know that they are not in a good position. And so whilst they are, not buying back the shares and they continuously create more shares, remember that this is a position that is just only going to get worse for the short sellers. And you can see how they're struggling right now. 0 shares to borrow since 20 hours while price dropping. This is not usual at all. So when you take a look at in terms of the shares available for AMC, we're seeing 0. Now, even prior to that, we were looking at very low amounts, ranging from 15,000, 60,000. And this is what we talked about. And something that is different from what we've seen in the past is, whereas in the past, we're seeing hundreds of thousands, millions of shares available to borrow, nowadays, we're only seeing very, very low amounts. Now, this clearly has got to do with some of the things that we've been talking about. For one, obviously the liquidity problems. We know that short banks, institutions, they're all facing the illiquidity problem right now. Whether it's due because of the fact they can't use crypto as collaterals, because the reverse repo dropping, or other situations, we know that they are struggling for money. Hence why we're seeing the low amount of shares available to borrow. But when you see a low amount of shares available to borrow, there's multiple reasons. One of the reasons you could be looking at in terms of is because they're borrowing all these shares that we are seeing the price of AMC dropping. But again, the way I like to look at it is understanding if we are not seeing that large amount of shares available to borrow, it's very likely they don't have the capital to be creating these synthetic shares as much as they would before in the past. Now, that precisely is a sign of weakening in terms of the capital that we have always talked about for the short sellers. And you can see, and this is a very, very important graph that I'll always bring up, but it's essentially taking a look at in terms of the AMC price, the AMC OBV, and you can see shorts will lose everything. AMC is the black hole. Now, when we take a look at this, what we can see is, of course, the price of AMC dropping. However, you can see that the volume of what we're seeing at the bottom, the OBV, is staying the same. Now, this has always been one of the biggest things we use in terms of understanding how the price of AMC dropping isn't because people are selling, but rather because of the shorts, because of the manipulation and suppression. And this very reason is extremely simple, and it's because we know that the OBV shows people selling their shares or are people buying and holding onto their shares. And so in this instant, we are seeing not only are people buying into large amounts of AMC, but they're also holding onto the AMC shares. Yet the price is actually dropping. So there we obviously understand if no one is selling the AMC shares, how could the price be dropping? Well, then that obviously takes us to understand that there is clear manipulation happening for AMC. And so this is what we talked about in terms of how shorts are worried, how shorts can't buy back, because they understand that the shares have been and already been bought up by the retail investors, the very ones who have bought from the beginning, the very ones who have not sold all these years through all these time. They know that this is happening, and that's the problem they are faced with right now. Another thing you can understand is the only way shorts win is if AMC goes bankrupt or if holders sell. AMC is not going bankrupt. All they have left to do is to persuade you to sell. So we've clearly seen with what AMC is doing recently that, all these management decisions that they're taking is all to prevent bankruptcy. And we are seeing how they're making their fundamentals right, they're making their financials right, they're increasing their cash to obviously pay off debt, all in which is decreasing the possibility of bankruptcy. Now, in this case, there's only one other way for the shorts to get out, and that's if the holders sell. But again, we're going back to this very picture. The OBV is clearly showing us that people are not selling their shares. That's why you continuously see these news articles persuading you to sell on the internet, because that's the only way they can. Whilst they understand it's not working, it's something that they've been doing. But the very fact that they are doing this shows us they're clearly desperate for the shares of AMC. They are clearly trapped in this whole play, hence why they continuously try and want to make people sell their shares. Another big reason is when you take a look at this. Now you can see this is a screenshot, and this is a screenshot that we've shown multiple times in the past, but I feel like it's really relevant when we talk about this whole situation. And it's understanding how in 2022, and you can see this is for the exchange for FINRA, we can see how the price of AMC shares was 142,000. And this is how impactful this could be. This is why the shorts are panicking, because they understand the absurdly amount of high price they will have to pay for when AMC squeezes. And that's what they're trying to prevent. You can easily imagine that the short sellers who have created millions, billions of shares of AMC, they cannot possibly cover the AMC shares at 142,000. When we go back to this simple picture, even if Citadel were to have $120 billion of capital available for them, if AMC, and again, they've created billions of shares, if AMC were to be even $1,000, 5,000, 10,000, they will not be able to buy it back without obviously the intervention of whether it's government aid or, again, the bankruptcy that we've talked about. And that's what they are worried. And it's precisely why I think the screenshot has a lot of relevance in terms of understanding what was happening back then. And this is the very thing that they've been trying to prevent from happening in the last 3 years. And not just apart from preventing it, they want to completely get rid of it from the source. They want to get rid of any possibility of this happening. And it's what we talked about. The only way shorts win is if AMC goes bankrupt or if holders sell. Because if AMC goes bankrupt, then it won't be listed. Then they won't ever have to cover the short positions. If the holders sell and the institutions buy in, then obviously they'll figure out an inside deal, because they understand that retail won't let them get away from this that easily. And we won't sell until we see 5,000, 10,000, or in this case, 142,000. And that's what they're worried about. Now, another thing to really strengthen the point of understanding why AMC is not going bankrupt, you can see the box office numbers this December month to date are the best ever since 20 years. We are so back. And you can see for 2024, we are at $285 million. Now, what's important is understanding the average here. The average is a very important number, because you can see, and we can use it to understand how we're going to do well in the future. 3.9 million is the average. And the reason why this is important, because now we have not only quality, but going into next year, we'll also have quantity as well. Because you can see 73 movies in terms of releases, 285 million. We had 77 releases for 2023, and it was 205 million, and of course 79 releases in 2022, and it was only 114 million. And this is something that we've talked about from the very start. It's about understanding that we are seeing the increase in box office. We are seeing the increase in the average. And even last year, what we talked about on this channel was understanding how AMC, how the box office is only going to get bigger. And that's in fact what it has done. If we take a look at a comparison of pre-COVID, you can see the average was, 1.6, 1.6, 1.2, 1.7, or even 1 million. And you can see we had double the movies. So 73, we have 142 here, 173, and it doesn't even get close to what we're looking at here of 285 million. And one of the things we realized was that this year, a big reason for why we didn't see that many releases was because of the strike. So going into next year, not only will we have a bigger average in terms of the movie revenues, the box office, but we'll also have an increase in the movies released. And when you compare the two together, you can obviously see how AMC will have a bigger box office, therefore they are able to make more money, whether it's from concession, from attendance, from food and beverage, everything that we've talked about in the past. AMC will be able to profit and of course get a bigger share of that. As always, not to financial advice, do take out a grain of salt. Make sure to do your own due diligence and research, and I'll catch you guys next time.